It's Michelle, your host here to tell you, as if you didn't already know, there are just 24 hours in a day. Blink your eyes, boom, and they're all taken away. So let's take back our hour to reflect, share, and connect, shall we? It's so important that we do.
Mute the phone, close the door, grab your brew and pour. This is your hour. Yes, this is our hour. Grab your pen and paper, we want to hear from you. Our to be more and have more too.
All right, so I'm just so glad that you're back. I'm glad to be back myself. And I wanted to just share a couple of things. The last recording was in May, Memorial Day, and here we are, fast forward about a month and a half later, if not 2 months away. So it is just so imperative. I'm very much looking forward to launching this call and getting some regular meeting dates set up, whether it is the first Thursday of the month or whether it's the first Monday of every week or whatever it evolves to be as far as how much time we have and how determined we are to take back an hour of our lives. Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Is it once every 2 weeks? That yet remains to be seen. So the last time when I say we, I'm saying this in a very visionary sense because I haven't really launched the call to make it a group, but I had a couple of people listen to the recording, and the last time the reading went out, the call went out, we were talking about, we were reading out of The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And a couple of things that I learned from the last call is that, at the end of the call, I started to get a little bit hoarse in my throat, and I had a little bit of a tickling feeling, and I had no water really at hand, and I had to pause and stop. And so today, I've got my trusty old, what's it called? The brand is called Spindrift, and if you are into sparkling water, oh man, you will love this. I purchased it at Publix. This flavor is unsweetened blood orange tangerine, and it is so delicious. It's carbonated. It has just a hint of tangerine juice in it, and orange and tangerine. Yes, orange and tangerine. So I'm going to be right next to my trusty water, my sparkling water, and I just do encourage you to take a look at it in the water aisle, I guess, of your grocery store of your choice. If they have the brand, it's called Spindrift. So like spin something and then drift, and it's got some really neat bright colors on the packaging. So anyway, so let's talk about the game of life. Now, the first chapter that we've covered already is called The Game, okay, appropriately titled after the title of the book. And the last, I would say the last paragraph, Florence Scovel Shinn talked about the power of words and speaking out certain words with power and conviction. And I love what she said at the end of chapter 1. I now smash and demolish by my spoken word every untrue record in my subconscious mind. They shall return to the dust heap of their native nothingness, for they came from my own vain imaginings. I now make my perfect records through the Christ within, the records of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is the square of life, the game completed. And I just wanted to reiterate that last line of the chapter because it's just a beautiful segue into the second chapter titled The Law of Prosperity. So that's what we're going to be reading from today. And I wanted to let you know that as this call evolves, it will get to the point where after we read for about 15 minutes that we'll have an open portion of the call where we all can share what we feel speaks to us from the chapter reading or any kind of insights that we might have had from anything on the call. And then we'll kind of funnel into a part of the call that we will not record in case anyone wants to share anything private. These calls are recorded and they will be posted to YouTube to the Our Call channel. But after we kind of have a chime, some kind of indication, whether it's a chime or a ringtone, we'll go into more of a private discussion part of the call that will not be recorded and will not be published. So that way, if we want to have an open discussion, just generic things that we want to share, we can post those things for the edification of others that listen back to the call. But then we can also have a private session in which, if anyone wants to share something more, personal that they don't want on a recording, that they can feel comfortable in sharing that. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading this, and this is from, again, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, Chapter 2, titled The Law of Prosperity. And this chapter is 4 pages long, so I think we'll try to get through all of it, if not just maybe half of it, and save the next half for the next call. All right, so the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. One of the greatest messages given to the race through the Scriptures is that God is man's supply, and that man can release, through his spoken word, all that belongs to him by divine right. He must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. Isaiah said, "My word shall not return unto me void, but shall accomplish that where it is sent." We know now that words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, ever molding man's body and affairs. A woman came to me in great distress and said that she was to be sued on the 15th of the month for $3,000. She knew no way of getting the money and was in despair. I told her God was her supply and that there is a supply for every demand. So I spoke the word. I gave thanks that the woman would receive $3,000 at the right time in the right way. I told her she must have perfect faith and act her perfect faith. The 15th came, but no money had materialized. She called me on the phone and asked me what should she do. I replied, "It is Saturday, so they won't see you today. Your part is to act rich, thereby showing perfect faith that you will receive it by Monday." She asked me to lunch with her to keep up her courage. When I joined her at the restaurant, I said, "This is no time to economize. Order an expensive luncheon. Act as if you have already received the $3,000. All things whatsoever ye ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive." You must act as if you had already received. The next morning she called me on the phone and asked me to stay with her during the day. I said, "No, you are divinely protected and God is never too late." In the evening she phoned again, greatly excited, and said, "My dear, a miracle has happened. I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang. I said to the maid, 'Don't let anyone in.' The maid, however, looked out of the window and said, 'It's your cousin with the long white beard.' So I said, 'Call him back. I would like to see him.' He was just turning the corner when he heard the maid's voice, and he came back. He talked for about an hour, and just as he was leaving, he said, 'Oh, by the way, how are finances?' I told him I needed the money, and he said, 'Why, my dear, I will give you $3,000 the first of the month.' I didn't like to tell him I was going to be sued. What shall I do? I won't receive it till the first of the month, and I must have it tomorrow. I said, 'I'll keep on treating.' I said, 'Spirit is never too late.' I give thanks that she has received the money on the invisible plane and that it manifests on time. The next morning her cousin called her up and said, 'Come to my office this morning, and I will give you the money.' That afternoon she had $3,000 to her credit in the bank, and wrote checks as rapidly as her excitement would permit. If one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation he has prepared for. For example, a man came to me asking me to speak the word that a certain debt would be wiped out. I found he spent his time planning what he would say to the man when he did not pay his bill, thereby neutralizing my words. He should have seen himself paying the debt. We have a wonderful illustration of this in the Bible relating to the three kings who were in the desert without water for their men and horses. They consulted the prophet Elisha, who gave them this astonishing message. Thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches. Man must prepare for the thing he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. For example, a woman found it necessary to look for an apartment during the year when there was a great shortage of apartments in New York. It was considered almost an impossibility, and her friends were sorry for her and said, "Isn't it too bad? You'll have to store your furniture and live in a hotel." She replied, "You needn't feel sorry for me. I am a Superman. I'll get an apartment." She spoke the words, Infinite Spirit opened the way for the right apartment. She knew there was a supply for every demand, and that she was unconditioned working on the spiritual plane, and that one with God is a majority. She had contemplated buying new blankets when the tempter, the adverse thought or reasoning mind, suggested, "Don't buy the blankets. Perhaps, after all, you won't get an apartment, and you will have no use for them." She promptly replied to herself, "I'll dig my ditches by buying the blankets." So she prepared for the apartment, acted as though she already had it. She found one in a miraculous way, and it was given to her although there were over 200 other applicants. The blankets showed active faith. It is needless to say that the ditches dug by the three kings in the desert were filled to overflowing. Read 2 Kings. Getting into the spiritual swing of things is no easy matter for the average person. The adverse thoughts of doubt and fear surge from the subconscious. They are the army of the aliens, which must be put to flight. This explains why it is so often darkest before the dawn. A big demonstration is usually preceded by tormenting thoughts. Having made a statement of high spiritual truth, one challenges the old beliefs in the subconscious, and error is exposed to be put out. This is the time when one must make his affirmations of truth repeatedly and rejoice and give thanks that he has already received. Before ye call, I shall answer. This means that every good and perfect gift is already man's awaiting his recognition. Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. The children of Israel were told that they could have all the land they could see. This is true of every man. He has only the land within his own mental vision. Every great work, every big accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision, and often just before the big achievement comes apparent failure and discouragement. The children of Israel, when they reached the promised land, were afraid to go in, for they said it was filled with giants who made them feel like grasshoppers. And there we saw the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. This is almost every man's experience. However, the one who knows spiritual law is undisturbed by appearance and rejoices while he is yet in captivity. That is, he holds to his vision and gives thanks that the end is accomplished. He has received. All right, we're going to end there for today. We'll put a little note there of today's date. And we'll continue on the next date. And I wanted to share something with listeners, you listeners that are listening in here, that I embarked upon this third call now with, again, as I said on the very first call, we often put things off in our lives that we want to accomplish because we are constantly in the someday I'll disease. Okay, someday I'll start that call, or someday I'll, or when my house is clean, or when my bills are all paid, or when I have the perfect relationships all around me. Someday I'll do that when. And I didn't plan on doing this call today. I've been struggling with other projects that I'm working on, and I said someday I'll get to that third call, and someday I'll promote the call so that others can join in when I've reached this point in my life, or I've gotten to, you know, to the end of that mile, so to speak, or maybe when I turn the corner on this project, or maybe when um, I get into a daily routine every day, and by the time I get on the call, everything in the household is all ordered and, orderly and tidy, and that I won't feel guilty. And I said to myself, you know what? You're never going to get there. There are too few hours in the day. As I said earlier, when we started the call, there are only 24 hours in a day. Blink your eyes and they're taken away. And what are they taken away by? So many different things, grocery shopping, cleaning the house, returning phone calls, picking up the kids, meal prep. Uh, I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And we haven't even talked about just going to take a shower and taking care of ourselves, right? But the day goes by so quickly. And I'm hoping, if nothing else on this call, that you're encouraged to take at least 1 hour for yourself, 1 hour to, as we say, reflect, share, and connect. And why is it important to reflect, share, and connect with other women who are trying to achieve the same thing you're doing? I think, and maybe you have the same experience, is that so often in our lives we pick up friends at certain times in our lives at a certain age. Let's say in your 20s or late 20s, or maybe in your 30s, or maybe at the pivotal point of you having a child, and you pick up certain friends that are conducive to that journey, right? Other moms, or maybe other people in college because you're in college, or whatever the case might be, or maybe at a new job that you started. But then as time goes on, you realize as your life starts to change, as you get older, you start to realize your goals change. But often inwardly, that inner work of changing is not matched by the outer reality of who we're surrounded by. And so you find yourself wanting to achieve certain things and wanting to ponder certain ideas and concepts, but you don't have anyone around you to bounce those ideas off of. I find myself in that situation. I don't know about you. I'd love to hear from you on a call about that. Have you found yourself in a situation where you started a job, you made a whole bunch of friends, and then you get kind of, acclimated to this job, and maybe you've been there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then your mindset starts to change. You're thinking, wow, there's so much more to life than just coming to this job 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, day in and day out, month in and month out, right? Year in and year out. And before you know it, blink your eyes, 5 years has passed, a decade, and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm still working with the same people, but my inner work, my mindset has changed, but I don't know anyone outside of work because I spend, at least 8 hours a day here. And so I wanted to create this call for the betterment of a lot of women to be as uh, something that they could enjoy or look forward to hopping on the call, dialing in, and hearing from other women, whether it's a struggle or a victory or a triumph that we've had, a goal that we've had that we've accomplished. Um, I wanted this to be a place of safety and resource. And having said that, as the time goes on, there will be website and all of that type of thing. Matter of fact, um, let me just look up something for a link, and then I'll share it with you. So far, if you go to connectwithmichelle.com, and now my first name is spelled with one L, but if you go to connectwithmichelle.com, I just want to verify this before I give it to you. It'll be linked below. If you go to connectwithmichelle.com/our, so that's OURHOUR, you'll see a link that will have some information on it, the phone number of the call, a guest book. I hope you will sign the guest book just to let me know that you've been there, call information, and some other links that I will continually try to add to our site here. So at any rate, we're going to cut the call short. It's not going to be an hour long. It will be an hour long once you arrive and others. So I'm hoping that as you're listening to my voice that you will share the link. And again, just go to connectwithmichelle, michele.com/our to get more information. And I just be patient with me as I build out this site. I will be adding more resources to it. So before we wrap up the call, I just want to kind of skim through what we have read so far in the Law of Prosperity. I'm just going to go through it and repeat some of the lines in the reading so far that I find to be pretty poignant. And one of the things that Florence said is, if one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation he has prepared for. When I first read that, I don't know about you, but when I first read it, I thought it just hit me like a bag of bricks. Like, wow. If I ask for success and I'm preparing for failure, I'll get the situation I'm preparing for. So the question is, what are we preparing for every day? What is it to prepare for success? In a small way, the fact that I already have a site created for this call, that's one way I can prepare for success. Because why would I, or anyone for that matter, create a site and put that much work into it, creating a graphic and a logo and connecting all the links and making sure they all work? If I go to, for example, and if you want to go there while you're listening to it, you can follow along with me. The first link, as of today anyway, in July of 2023, join our hour call. So you go there and it takes you to a video, which is muted right now. It's not going to play. And then the next link is called the latest call. And then it has a sound graphic there so you can listen to the call, the one that was recorded back in May. And then you have a guest book. And these are all things that took forethought and time out of my day to put this together. There's a link called the call information. Basically, when you click on it, you see the phone number 717-908-1923. So you can see the phone number to call in. Okay? And then the PIN, which is 947-7017. So, that took time. There's also a donation link there if you wanted to donate or help support the call, and it's some of the resources that I'll be sharing with that will be going toward that purpose. It took time to create the site, create the colors, the links, make sure all the links work, a little bit of graphic design so far that has gone into it. And so that is just one example of preparing for success. But oftentimes we do things in life and we have a goal and we don't do anything toward it. Did you know that if you have a goal, in my opinion, and you don't work toward it, you don't even take as much as a turtle step toward it, you're preparing for failure just by default of not doing anything toward it. So I wanted to encourage you, if that quote or that, that which she wrote hit you as it hit me, I want you to just think about whatever you silently think about each day. Those are the things in your life that will make your life easier, make your life and the life of your family better. But by preparing for failure, basically doing nothing, you're neutralizing the entire thought process you just had up until that point. You're basically, it becomes null and void, whatever your goal is. So that's one thing I just wanted to share. And, how I can prepare for failure if I'm asking for success, or if I'm asking to have, for example, I'll use this call for example. If I want this call to be successful and I don't stop what I'm doing as I did today, and I don't up that ante, and I don't scale that up and get it to the point where it actually launches, and I have a few women on the call and those women share it with other women. In order for this call to be successful, you have to have at least, I would say, 5 to 7 women on the call all collaborating, because not all 5 or 7 are always going to make it together. So then you may end up with 3 or 4, and even that's great. But it's going to be it's required of me to prepare for that level of success. And of course, I want the call to reach as many women as possible, because I think that we as women, speaking for myself perhaps only, I think that we really struggle with having constructive friendships with other women. I think we all have acquaintances. I know I do. I think we all have friendships. We'll have either one best friend or maybe 3 or 4. And then we have lots of neighbors, and then acquaintances outside of our neighborhood, and then women at schools, and where our kids go to school or work or whatever. But I don't think that we always have constructive relationships, one that really help us on the path that we find ourselves on, if that path indeed is a path in which we want to personally develop ourselves and work toward, whether it's a financial goal or a spiritual goal, whether you want a new position with the current company you're with, or maybe you want to get out of that company and start your own business. Whatever it is, if you have goals that are way beyond that which you can even just conceive with your mind, you need help getting there. If you have goals and dreams that are way beyond your comprehension, you do need constructive relationships around you. And I feel that women are often lacking that, especially lacking trusted constructive relationships where you really trust the person in whom you're confiding about whatever it is that you're, aspiring to. And so that's why I stated earlier that as the call launches, as it kicks off, there will be a portion of the call that is, yes, open for discussion and will be part of the recording, but then we'll have someone volunteer on the line to help moderate, and we'll have like a chime or something that we can segue off to stop the recording, and then we can have a more personal, intimate discussion on the subject matter. So, all right. So going back, I just want to highlight 2 more things from this chapter, and then we'll conclude the call. So let's see. I loved the woman who needed the money for something. She was being sued, and I love the fact that she had her cousin come over, and she didn't know what was going to happen. But you know what? A lot of us, myself included, when we have money issues, it's very easy to isolate ourselves. And this cousin came over. I'm assuming he either came over planned and she forgot it, or he just came totally unannounced. And I just find it funny that she actually called him back. Okay? She said in the evening, she phoned again, greatly excited, and said, "My dear, a miracle has happened. I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang. I said to the maid, 'Don't let anyone in.'" Isn't that usually our kind of de facto or default response? Don't let anyone in. We're often like that when we have, I know I am. I don't know about you, but when I have issues that I'm trying to work through, I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I go into control mode. I start cleaning my house. If there's a bill I have to pay and I don't know how I'm going to do it, I go into cleaning. I don't know why. I don't know if it's procrastination, like I don't want to think about it, or is it just that I want to feel like I have control over something because maybe I'm feeling subconsciously a lack of control, and then I go clean my office and my closet, and maybe it's just a way so that because I know I have to call the company and I just want to procrastinate. Okay, they're open till 5, so I'm going to clean till like 4:30, and then I'll call them, and we're just trying to figure things out, and we're often like, don't let anyone in. When I read that the first time, I just thought, wow, isn't that true? I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang and I said to the maid, "Don't let anyone in." She was not she was not interested in the very least was seeing anybody. She was being sued, and I don't know how much that money was back in that day and age. Um what was the amount again? $3,000. So that must have been a lot of money. But the maid looked out of the window and said, "It's your cousin with the long white beard." Now, you know what? She wasn't asked, "Who is it?" She just said to her, "Don't let anyone in." But the maid said, "It's your cousin with the long white beard." So the homeowner said, "Call him back. I would like to see him. He was just turning the corner when he heard the maid's voice and he came back." I just find that fascinating. So I think that sometimes when we're in a situation, we're in a bind, we're in a pickle, there are people that we really don't want to see. But sometimes if we open ourselves up, you just don't know why, God or the universe might have put that person on your path. Why was that person prompted to come visit me today? And he asked her, she didn't tell him, he asked her, "Oh, by the way, how are your finances?" And she told him she needed the money. And isn't that sweet that he said, "Why, my dear, I will give you $3,000 the first of the month." So I love that. I just love that story, that the universe used a family member, someone that she didn't want to really talk to. And if it wasn't for the maid, she may have never called him back. She might have just said, "I'm not going to deal with anybody today. I'm not going to answer the door." And the cousin might have just thought, "Okay, she's not in. I'm going back home." But sometimes when we let down resistive, that resistant uh, gate, that gatekeeper, our conscious mind, which can be a gatekeeper, it can keep things out. When we let that down and we just kind of let things flow, uh, sometimes good things come of it. Not all the time, but sometimes. I know that I work from home oftentimes, and when my doorbell rings, I don't have a maid here to say, "Don't let anyone in," but I feel that way. I actually have a sign on my door, "Do not ring my doorbell." I have that there for a particular reason because I work from home on a headset, and people can hear when my doorbell rings, or at least if they can't hear it, it's certainly disruptive to me, and I can't answer it when I'm on a call. I can't just say to the customer, "Oh, hold on, let me go answer my door." So there's a note on my door, like something I ordered from Amazon. It just says, "Text me if I'm expecting you. Then you should have my text number. If not, just leave the packages at the door." But that's often my attitude when I get into a situation where I'm panicking. And I think that if we open up the gate, that resistant gate, if we just kind of open it up and be less resistant to other people, sometimes God can work through those people. So, all right, so one more highlight, and we will wind down the call. Let's see what else stuck out to me. I'm just looking at my notes here. Oh, the woman that bought the blankets. How did you feel about that? The shortage of apartments. Boy, how things have not changed, right? I'm sure New York City is still like that, and it is. And there are many great cities in the world where there are 2, 3, 4, 5-year, 10-year wait lists as far as apartment rentals are concerned. And I love the fact that she just did something as simple as buying blankets. The blankets showed active faith. And I like that concept of having a goal or something that seems unattainable and just getting one thing that you would need for that particular goal. Let's say, for example, you want to go on a trip to Greece. I don't know where that came from. I don't want to go to Greece. Not that I don't want to, but I don't have like that longing. If you bought me tickets, if you sent me tickets in the mail, I certainly wouldn't not go. But that's not been on my list, but it just came out of my head right now. So let's just say you wanted to go to Greece, and there was a particular, I don't know, a book on how to speak the language, or maybe an app is not tangible enough. Maybe a piece of luggage. I don't know. What could you buy specifically for a trip to Greece? I'm not sure. I'd have to kind of give it some thought. But let's just say a book. Nowadays, you don't have to buy a book, but you can go on a website and learn the language just by doing that. But it could be anything. It could be, I'm trying to think of perhaps a better example. Okay. You're looking to start a young girls club in your neighborhood. Okay. And you know that to have that young girls club, if you want to start it with, let's say, opening it up to 10 girls, like at an after school kind of program, and you want to have 10 girls, maybe you buy 10 chairs. You go to Home Depot and you buy 10, folding chairs. And then you start making maybe a business card for yourself, or a poster, or a website, and you constantly work toward it. Now, in this scenario, it was a little bit of a shortage of supply. But whereas a goal is just something you just have to find yourself working toward it. But you know what I'm saying. I think that sometimes we think that, if someone says there's a shortage, that we take that for gospel. What is it going to hurt you to buy the blanket? If worse comes to worse, you can donate the blanket at some point. But at least you can get the creative juices of your subconscious mind flowing toward that end. And I often do that for myself. If I want to do something, if it's a business I want to start, hey, it might fail, but you know what? I'm going to make a business card for it. I'm going to go to VistaPrint. I'm just going to put a card together. I just start getting the engine cranking toward that goal. Or I might make a list of 10 things that I need to do in order to get it going. And then usually I'll meet somebody. Like, hey, we start talking and we'll be like, hey, I have these 10 chairs at my house. I'm trying to sell them. Do you know anybody? And you're like, what? Yeah, I need 10 chairs. I was just thinking about that the other day, right? Or uh, I've got these notebooks at my house. They're all brand new notebooks and they're kind of girly. And I was just looking for someone to give them to, maybe who has grandkids that come over or something, just so they can color, or, you know, or for homework or whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, I could use those notebooks. I was just thinking about that because I'm thinking about starting this after school girls club or whatever the case might be. I'm just using that as an example. But this woman bought these new blankets. And oftentimes we'll say to ourselves, it's like we shoot ourselves before we even get going, right? We push ourselves back on the couch before we even get up off the couch. And we'll say, well, why do I need all those chairs? You're not going to have these girls, no one's going to come to your after school program anyway. Most kids most kids are so housebound nowadays, right? They're all playing these online games and have a shortage of vitamin D, so why would they come to some old lady or some lady like me who has a little after school program teaching girls how to knit or sew or whatever? Nobody does that anymore. I mean, you know what I'm saying, you start to talk yourself back to square one where you haven't accomplished anything. You haven't even tried anything. It's like you're trying to get off the couch, and before you can even find yourself coming up off the couch in a standing position, you've already pushed yourself back uh, in a sitting position. So you haven't even allowed yourself to fully stand up yet, and you're already pushing yourself back, yourself back into the couch to get comfortable, because that's what our brain is meant to do. It's meant to keep us safe, right? So it's meant to keep us safe and comfortable. As I don't know if you ever follow Mel Robbins' podcast or on YouTube. Mel Robbins talks about that, how when we venture out to do something that we've never done before, our brain, the whole function of our brain is to keep us safe and comfortable. And so that's why we often procrastinate, or, as I said, shoot ourselves in the foot or push ourselves back onto the couch before we even got into a standing position, because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to feel exposed or vulnerable or fail at anything. We recoil at that whole thought of failure. I don't know why we as human beings are like that, but we do. We recoil at the thought of failure. Just, oh my God, it just scares us to death to fail at something. And here this woman went out and bought, I'm sure, at a nice little price. She may not even have had it in her budget, but she went out and bought blankets. For what? She didn't need them at the time. She didn't have the apartment. So, well, she found the apartment, as it says. She found one in a miraculous way, and it was given to her, although there were over 200 other applicants. I would love to know how that happened. I know it says miraculous way, but I would love to know what had happened. Was it someone on the list who got an apartment and knew her and told maybe the renting landlord, the renter, about her? How did she get it in a miraculous way? But it doesn't elaborate on that. But at any rate, well, thank you for listening in. I hope you've gained some value from today's call and the chapter, The Law of Prosperity, out of the Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And I hope that you will go to the site Connect with Michelle. It's Michelle with one L. /hour. And I hope there's something there that will help you connect. Well, there is. It says join our hour call, and the call information is the tab that you can click on to get the dial-in information. And the join our hour call is there to link you to the YouTube. So hopefully you'll find something there. And if you want to connect with me, there will be a tab there to leave me a voicemail. Yes, a bona fide voicemail. If you want to speak to me and say, hey, Michelle, I was looking for this, but I didn't find this, or I'd like to join the call. Can you text me or whatever? You can sign the guest book as well with your information. There's a place for you to put your mobile number in there if you want me to text you or contact you. All right, so thank you for joining the hour call. And remember that anytime you are going to embark on something new, there's always going to be your your conscious mind that's telling you to don't do it, put on the brakes, pump the brakes, you're going to suck at it. You just have to do it anyways. Thanks.
In order to progress, you know that you must master a new skill, but you are avoiding it because you will be bad at it. And those closest to you will often consider you a fool, but you'll always be a fool when you start something new. So you must be willing to be a fool and fumble until you conquer your own fears.